Don't you ever feel compassion for yourself? Do you keep being hard on yourself, saying harsh words to yourself in your mind even after the smallest mistake? If your answer is yes, then this video is for you. Actually, that harsh language you use toward yourself today is not your true voice. It is an echo of the things you heard from your environment over the years, the things that were placed on you, and the things you slowly accepted as if they were your own voice. This video is one of the most important parts of our self-worth and inner voice series. Why? Because people are not only hurt by the words they hear from the outside. The deeper impact often comes from how those words turn into a voice inside. Today we will uncover the reflection of your environment within you. Then we will talk about how to transform that voice. If you are ready, let's begin calming that endless storm of criticism inside you. I share videos every day on my channel to help you understand yourself without labeling yourself. You can subscribe to benefit from them. A person is not only affected by the words they hear from the outside. Over time, they are also affected by how those words turn into an inner voice. They feel disturbed by what that voice triggers inside them. Have you ever noticed how you speak to yourself during the day? When you make a mistake, what goes through your mind? Do you say, "It's okay, I can learn from this"? Or do you say, "You failed again, you are always like this anyway"? When you think you do not look good enough in a social setting, what do you say to yourself? Do you say, "I feel anxious right now, but this does not mean I am worthless"? Or do you say, "Everyone probably thinks I am not good enough"? This is how strongly the inner voice affects our sense of self-worth. Because self-worth is shaped not only by what other people say to us, but also by the sentences we repeat to ourselves again and again. But there is a very important point here. Not all of your inner voice may truly belong to you. You internalize what you hear from the outside. In other words, the criticism you heard as a child, the expectations from your family, the words of your teachers, the comments of your partners, the messages from your friends, or the patterns society taught us can become internalized over time. At first, someone says to us, "You are too sensitive. You cannot do it anyway. Do not exaggerate. You should have done better. If you act like this, no one will love you. If you do not please people, you will be alone." Then one day we realize that nobody outside is saying these sentences anymore. We are saying them to ourselves. This is how the inner voice is formed. Repeated messages from the outside can start working inside us as if they are our own thoughts. That is why many people get the most exhausted inside their own minds. Because even when nobody outside criticizes them, there is still a voice inside constantly criticizing them. Sometimes this voice becomes perfectionistic. You should do better. Sometimes it becomes belittling. You are not enough as you are. Sometimes it becomes threatening. If you make a mistake, everyone will leave you. Sometimes it becomes comparing. Look, everyone is better than you. Sometimes it becomes blaming. You always do this anyway. And over time, the person starts to believe that this voice is the truth. But just because a thought passes through your mind, it does not mean it is true. The fact that your inner voice speaks harshly to you does not mean that voice is right. Because some inner voices do not truly guide us. They only repeat old fears. For example, if your inner voice says, "If you make a mistake, you will not be accepted," maybe this is not the truth of today. Maybe it is a fear you learned in the past. If your inner voice says, "Do not upset anyone or you will not be loved," maybe this is not a healthy relationship rule. Maybe it is a false belief you learned long ago. If your inner voice says, "If you are not more successful, you are not valuable," maybe this is not your real need. Maybe it is an expectation that was placed on you. That is why noticing the inner voice is so important. Because sometimes a person lives with a voice inside that does not truly belong to them. And that voice weakens their belief in themselves every single day. You make a small mistake and the voice immediately comes in, "You ruined everything again." You want to rest and the voice immediately comes in, "You are being lazy." You want to say no and the voice immediately comes in, "Do not be selfish." You do not receive attention from someone and the voice immediately comes in, "So you are not valuable enough." And without realizing it, the person is constantly judged inside their own mind. This gradually reduces their belief in themselves. It weakens their connection with life because it is very exhausting to try to stay strong on the outside while constantly attacking yourself on the inside. The point here is not to constantly say positive sentences to yourself. It is not about being overly positive and ignoring everything. The point is to notice how fair, how realistic, and how supportive your inner voice really is. Ask yourself, how do I speak to myself? Does this voice help me or does it constantly make me feel smaller? Where did I first hear this sentence? Is this really my voice, or have I heard it before? Would I speak like this to someone I love? These questions are very important. Because without changing the inner voice, it becomes harder to build solid belief in yourself. If there is a voice inside constantly saying, you are not enough, even the smallest criticism from the outside can feel very heavy. If there is a voice inside constantly saying, you must be better in order to be loved, you may try to prove yourself in relationships. If there is a voice inside constantly saying, if you make a mistake, you will lose your value, you may become afraid to try new things. So the inner voice is not just a thought. It affects your whole life. It affects your behaviors. It affects the relationships you enter. It affects where you stay silent and where you speak. It affects how you treat yourself after a mistake. It affects how you interpret success and how you carry yourself. That is why the inner voice is one of the most important parts of valuing yourself. But here is the good news. If the inner voice was learned, it can be reshaped. Today, you can begin learning how to develop a more balanced voice toward yourself. Now pause this video and take a pen and paper. Read these from time to time and try to apply them in your daily life. Instead of saying, I am not enough, use this sentence. I am struggling right now, but this does not mean I am completely inadequate. I am open to growth. Instead of saying, nobody loves me, say, someone not understanding me does not mean I am not worthy of love. Love reflects the other person's capacity, not my capacity to be loved. Instead of saying, if I make a mistake, I will not be accepted, say, making mistakes is part of being human. It does not define my worth, it shows that I tried. Instead of saying, if I rest, I am useless, say, resting is my need. My worth is not measured by my productivity. In fact, resting can increase my productivity over time. These may not become internalized immediately. Because an inner voice that has been repeated for years does not change in one day. But awareness is the first step. That is why it is important to read and repeat these from time to time. My advice is this: set aside an empty notebook for my videos. In every video, I usually give affirmations like these. Write down the ones that feel right for you. I always forget to say, take notes. So you can watch the videos that resonate with you using a notebook and turn this into a habit. Subscribe to benefit from this information. After taking notes comes questioning. Then comes building a more realistic, fair, and supportive sentence again and again. Not only the sentences I give you, you can also write positive versions of your own negative sentences, because the brain learns repeated messages. If the sentence I am not enough has been repeated for years, then today a new path must be created through repetition. That is why the way you speak to yourself matters so much. Because the relationship you build with yourself can affect the foundation of all your other relationships. If you constantly treat yourself like an enemy on the inside, it becomes very difficult to feel valuable on the outside. But when you learn to approach yourself with more fairness, realism, and compassion inside, the value you give yourself begins to rest on a stronger foundation. In the next video, I will talk about how comparison and the need for approval affect our self-worth. Because sometimes, instead of feeling our own value inside, we start looking for it constantly in other people's eyes.